Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to FLEXN at the Park Avenue Armory. You are in for an amazing evening of a new form of dance that has been invented in the last 10 years by a group of inspired, brilliant, and seriously determined people in East New York. And one of the main inventors, pioneers, and visionaries is here tonight on this stage with us. That is Red Rock Gray right there. Of course, a new language comes into the world because there are new things that need to be said. They need to be said differently. They need to be said with a different kind of power and precise articulation. This dance form is absolutely precise, detailed, incredibly emotionally nuanced. The main moves involve bone breaking. Bone breaking is not just a fashion statement. It is what it means when you have been pulverized, you've been crushed, you've been destroyed by the world, and you rebuild every part of your being bone by bone, and you find new strength, new identity, and new power. Gliding is about how you face obstacles, how you face difficulties. You stay smooth, you stay cool in the midst of heat, in the midst of difficulty, in the midst of huge adversity. You don't lose your cookies. You actually make a very smooth set of moves. Pausing, which is Reg's specialty, is how you take any gesture and you break it up into all of its pieces, like an animation, like what you do with a video on your phone. Stop it, start it, move it, make it larger, make it smaller, actually anatomize even a simple gesture so you realize you could recombine those elements in some new, powerful, creative way, and you call attention to what's the power that's inside every gesture. And connecting, which is a series of incredibly elaborate hand and foot gestures that recognize that everything does connect. We are all connected, and no issue is separate from any other issue. We have to recognize that everything happens in a total matrix. This is not just a dance move, this is a survival strategy, and this is a visionary determination to influence future reality. We started working on this project in the first week of August. 3 weeks before, a man named Eric Gardner had been choked to death on the street in Staten Island for selling separate cigarettes. Most news stories, when they appear, of an African American being killed by police are there for a day, maybe two. 3 weeks later, the Eric Gardner story was not disappearing. Second week of our rehearsals, Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson. And there were people in the streets all across this country. There was suddenly this incredibly, this powerful moment that people of all stripes were out there saying, we are in a system of deliberate and exaggerated cruelty, throwing away the lives of an entire generation, of a certain segment of the population that has gone way too far in the wrong direction. And this needs to be addressed and stopped and redirected, both for human cost and financial cost, which are both incalculable. So those things fed into and shaped the project you're going to see tonight. Suddenly people are saying there needs to be change. Most change is usually incremental and nearly invisible. There is a chance right now to make serious, visible structural change. And we do not want to lose this moment. We want to mark it together. Welcome. So we've invited this evening 3 people who are on the forefront and vanguard of change, people who have devoted themselves for years to change, and their moment is here, and they're working full force. And it's a pleasure this evening to have Victoria Sammartino, who is the founder of Voices UnBroken, one of the path-breaking and absolutely model programs for helping incarcerated youth find their voice, use their voice, speak up, speak out, and begin to articulate and re-articulate their situation. We're also incredibly pleased that Danielle Sered is joining us from Common Justice, from the Vera Institute. Hello, Danielle. Yes, your fan base is also in the room, thank God, but I want to count myself among those people. This question of restorative justice, this question of what would justice look like if it was not a steel and cement cage? Do we have other ideas of what justice could be? And one of the reasons we feel this is a question for the arts is because all across America we are facing what could only be called failure of imagination. What else could we imagine as justice? Danielle is in the forefront of this question. And then Ashley Ellis, who is one of the all-time transformation agents. She is here, yes. Would you please, Danielle, begin by just bringing us into your restorative place and perhaps an experience that actually marked you and that directs your work?
Sure, it's a total honor to be here with all of you tonight, with the dancers who are about to join us. It's an honor to be here with the folks from Common Justice, who you heard. One of whom on our staff, I just found out, used to dance with some of the folks who are about to dance tonight. So we have a small, interconnected world. And one of the questions we ask at Common Justice is, what if the worst harm that we cause to one another could be repaired? Right? So what if the worst things we have done are things we could somehow make right? And what if the worst things done to us might be things that could be made as right as possible? And some of us will have experience of that harm being violence, whether by committing it or surviving it. Some of us will have the experience of having been incarcerated for the violence we caused. And all of us will have the experience of hurting people and being hurt. And we know full well that when we are hurt, there's a grieving process that we go through, right? We have to go through something to find our way back to our own self-love, to our own dignity, to our own hope. We understand that as a culture. The thing I think we have lost as a culture to mass incarceration, right? So to the single largest experiment in incarceration in all of human history. One of the things we have lost that's sacred to all of us is accountability, right? That thing we do to make it right. And it's my belief that it is in the process of being accountable when we have caused harm, of saying what I did was wrong, I am sorry for it, I will make it as right as possible, and I will not do it again, that it is that process for us when we're accountable that allows us to recuperate our dignity, to recuperate our self-love, to recuperate our hope. So the project I direct is one that addresses serious and violent felonies through an alternative to incarceration and victim service program. It brings people together who have caused harm with those they've harmed, only if those people want to. People reach agreements about how to make things as right as possible. If those agreements are fulfilled, the people responsible for that harm don't go to prison. And in the meantime, we work with the people who were hurt to help them come through what happened to them in their lives generally. But at the core of the project is a belief that the thing we all depend on in transforming this is the most basic of things, which is the fundamental fact of our shared human dignity. And it's a fundamental fact that has been all but eradicated from the criminal justice system as we know it, that many of us have internalized, even those of us who've never gone near or touched a prison, have internalized a reality of impunity and punishment instead of one of accountability and healing. And it's our belief that even in cases of serious harm, that if we steer into a space of accountability and healing, we can actually live in that world that we can at this time only imagine, where the worst things we do are reparable and repaired.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I'll clap for that.
Victoria, would you speak about the restorative nature of your work?
Yes. So I had the privilege of starting my career as an educator on Rikers Island when I was about 21. And I knew that I grew up in the Bronx in the 80s and 90s, and when prisons were being filled with our community members, and I knew that there were voices I hadn't heard. I knew there were people that I was missing, but I instinctively wound up working at Rikers and really fighting for the opportunity to work at Rikers, knowing that there would be voices that I needed to hear and people that I needed to know. And so I had the great privilege of beginning my career there, and really early on realizing that I was working at the high school for adolescent girls there as a teacher, and I realized really early on, one, that I had been right, that there were voices I was missing, there were people I was missing. I started to walk down the street, and I came to think of them as like potholes, where there were all these places where people should be. I'd get to a store, and I'd open the door, and I'd think, I know someone who would have held this door for me if they were out, but they're not out right now. So I wound up leaving my position as an educator and founding Voices UnBroken and continuing a relationship with the school at Rikers, but building out an organization that would make creative writing workshops accessible for vulnerable youth, right, quote unquote, and in particular, young people who were in restrictive residential settings. So young people who were incarcerated or detained or in some kind of an alternative setting, young people in the foster care system, young people in drug treatment. And at some point in the 2000s, a girl asked me what I wrote about, because I'm a poet, and I said, I write about, justice and community and whatever. She said, yeah, miss, but what do you write about us? And so I brought a piece with me, and I thought I would read a poem together. I thought to bring this because did you guys all see did they see the images outside?
The Richard Ross photograph exhibit in the lobby.
Of women and girls in the juvenile justice system? Yes? Did folks see? Okay, so some people did.
Check it out when we're done talking.
I was really moved by it because it's missing the faces of young people, right? And so it's girls, and you want them not to be where they are, right? It's this human experience, but they're missing their faces. And so, I don't know, maybe want poetry in my life. I cried inside only once. Not for the girl who hung it up a month before Christmas. Not for the girl who loved heroin so much she wrote it love poems. Not for the girl who spent 365 days in the Bing. Not for the girl who had to be escorted with shackles connecting her wrist to her waist, to her ankles, and mitts on her hands. Not for the girl who whispered Spanish poetry into a microphone in a jail gymnasium and curtsied when she was finished. Not for the girl whose grandma moved away and didn't leave a forwarding address. Not for the girl doped on mental meds who lifted her head occasionally to vomit a brilliant poem. Not for the girl I'd known on the street who begged me to take her home. Not for the girl who hand-copied the poems I gave her and mailed them to her little brother. Not for the woman disfigured by fire who made drawings like photographs and jumped when I came up behind her. Not for the girl with my father's name who could not pronounce the crime she'd been convicted of. Not for the woman who slept with a teddy bear she made out of a Rikers bedsheet. Not for the girl who's been inside half a decade and is still waiting for her first visit. Not for the woman my mother's age who tells me not to hug her when the guards are watching. Not for the girl who wrote the best poem I've ever read. Not for the girl who was sold for crack at age 9 and asked me if she was still a virgin. Not for the girl who couldn't find New York on a map. Not for the woman who told me she had her first good night's sleep in prison. Not for the pregnant girl I slipped apple Jolly Ranchers to on the low. They're contraband, don't do that. And not for the girl with the sentence longer than the years I've been alive. I cried inside only once, not for any of the girls, the women, but for all of us. Not for these places I've been, the people I've met, or the stories I've heard. No, I cried messy, inappropriate tears for the things that are too beautiful or too shameful to say. Thank you.
Ashley, would you say a word about your work and the motivation that is the spark and the flame?
So I've been working with young people in the juvenile justice system for the past 3 or 4 years. And one of the ways that I got thrusted into this position fully was through restorative justice. In Chicago, restorative justice was, it's actually a pretty big thing in Chicago. And I was trained as a restorative justice circle keeper, and I was sent out to work in restorative justice hubs. So in Chicago, they identified organizations and they implemented these hubs where we would hold circles at. So instead of our kids, as an alternative to incarceration, instead of them being locked up when they were placed on probation or something like that, they were sent out into these hubs where they would come and we would do circles. Restorative circles are, it's a form, it's a type of restorative justice because it's many different types. And that's one of the things that I use today, and it's like the foundation to my work, because I think the greatest thing that you said about like restorative work is it's not a focus on like what did you do, like whose fault it is, but it's more so on like what was the harm that was done, and then healing that hurt on both sides, because we understand that hurt people. And it's like, how do we go in the process of doing that work? And right now, I do a weekly girls circle for the organization that I work with as an alternative to incarceration. And it's such transformative work because you can use restorative circles for so many things, right? So you can do it for like victim offender and try to restore those relationships. But one of the things, and one of the young ladies who was supposed to come with me, Star, she was with me when I started doing circles in the Bronx. And one of the things that I believe that you take from that is how to sit in other people's shoes, how to see things from different perspectives. And another way that we use circles is we use it as empowerment. We use it to build, to explore. And it's such a great tool. And I think it's imperative that it's implemented into a lot of different places, because like even in school, right? So one of the things that we see is like a lot of kids get suspended from school and they're expected to come straight back, and nobody says anything to them about being suspended. Nobody apologizes to them. Nobody try to figure out how they were feeling. They're expected to just come back in and go about business as usual. But it's like if restorative practice were implemented into a school, you'll be able to take a kid probably before they get suspended and sit them down with the teacher, with the principal, with all the different people at play to say, like, what was the harm that was done? How did this make you feel? How does this make the administrator feel? How does this make your friend feel? How does it affect the people around you? And that's where the accountability piece comes in, because it's like you're accountable. And you begin to understand not only your actions, but how your actions affect other people. And understand that anybody can do this work. I think that's the best part about this, is that anybody can do it. A lot of times when we see it as people who like are clinical or like business people with degrees, and it's like they're the ones who got to hold the circle. But in reality, like anybody can do it. We train young people to do this. Community Connections for Youth 3 weeks ago, we just went upstate and we trained probably 40 mentors from Harlem, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, in doing restorative circles. Because in reality, it's the people who come from these neighborhoods who should be out there doing the restorative work. And I think that's one of the key things is getting the people within those neighborhoods and connected to those neighborhoods and connected to these young people to get in there and do the work instead of always trying to bring outside people. So that's the work that I'm doing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Reg, would you just say a word about your group that we're going to see tonight and the circle idea, the dream ring?
Okay. I get nervous sometimes, so don't laugh at me, please. I'm a good dancer, though. No, but honestly, well, I got to take everybody back for a little second. Growing up in Brooklyn, you had choices. You had a lot of choices to make. You can get your job, you can go sell drugs, you can get a gang. There's so many different options that you can do and so many different roads you can go down. There's this lady when we started dancing and stuff like that, and this lady and this guy, and Rocky and Sandra, they created a show called FLEXN Brooklyn. Now, when they created this show called FLEXN Brooklyn, you know, I used to watch it on TV, Channel 68, BCAT, and we just like watch the show all the time. It's like, yo, the show is dope, the show is dope. And then one day, me and my friend decided to say, you know, well, let's go on the show. We went on the show, we checked out some people, it was like, okay, cool. So we went up to Rocky and Sandra's house. We went to the apartment, and we had to get some tickets for the show because we had to sell tickets to get onto the show. So like, okay, cool. So we did that thing. All that situation happened. Take you to speed it up a little bit. Every Saturday, this lady and this guy, Rocky and Sandra, used to let us in their house every Saturday. In this small apartment, banging up the walls, messing up their carpet. And it wasn't just us. It was a community of dancers, is what I'm trying to tell you guys. A community of dancers. You see maybe like 50 or 60 people inside our home eating spaghetti and curry chicken and Kool-Aid. That was the menu. That was on the menu. So we used to do that like every Saturday, and it was something that we looked forward to. But the thing is, all these people were so diverse, and it was some place that people can go to because it took people away from the street. You know, it took people away from the one to sell drugs or I have to think about this at home, or I have to think about that. It took people away from so many different things. And it was a place of it was like a safe haven, you know what I'm saying, for pretty much everybody in Brooklyn. And when this lady, you know what I'm saying, she opened up her house to us, and we loved it, you know, and then they created this place and this environment for dancers, for the youth, you know, for people like that. And like I said, it was so diverse, and I mean diverse meaning gang members, people that sold drugs, you know what I'm saying, people, drug dealers, like they all came to this place. But the thing about this is, when it was in this place, they weren't those people. They were totally different. They were dancers, they were singers, they was rappers. They just showed so much talent that you would not even believe. So going a couple of years down the road, I just it started slowing down, whatever, and things started getting a little different. And so I decided to say, you know what? We need that back in Brooklyn. You know, we didn't want to let that go. So I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to take on what she left behind and say, you know what, Sandra, Rocky, I think I can do this. You know, Rocky, the guy Rocky, he's always telling me, hey, Reggie, yo, I think you can do this, man. You can do it. And I'm like, yo, Rocky, I can't do it, Rocky. But he always, he had this faith in me, and he used to always tell me, yo, you can do it. So I'm like, you know what? Why not try it, you know? So I started letting people in my living room every day. 40, 50, 60 people. You go on YouTube right now, you can see it. You just type in the dream ring, and it's there. So, and then we used to call it Flex House. So we called it Flex House, and I started letting people in my house I didn't do it every Saturday, though. I did it every 2 Saturdays. I needed a rest. So every 2 Saturdays, we have people coming in the house and just dancing and everybody having a good time. And so I'm like, you know what, I want to just bring this whole community within the Flex House and make it a dance event. So I decided, you know what, when I make this dance event, it's not going to be a one-on-one thing. It's going to be a 2-on-2 thing. It's going to be a 3-on-3. You need somebody. You're going to need somebody in this event. You can't just do it by yourself. And that's kind of what I feel as a community, when one person can spark something, but it takes a community to build it. So once that spark is sparked, the ripple effect is going to keep happening. You know what I'm saying, within the community. So we did that, and the community started building the Dream Ring. So I started doing my dance battles and competitions, and when I'm doing this, hundreds and I'm going to say thousands of dancers actually responded to it pretty well. And they just started coming in, and some of the dances that you see today are part of the Dream Ring. And the Dream Ring, the dream, standing for dance rules everything around me, because that's my life, and I know that's the life of these guys that's going to come on the stage right now. And the ring is for the circle, and it's for the circle and the community of people that's, you know what I'm saying, that actually started this. I mean, and it's a part of Brooklyn. And the fact that we're in the circle, we're not in the circle, we're a part of the circle. And when you're a part of a circle, it's just going to continue to grow. So that's part of what I do, is the Dream Ring, and that's some of the dances you're going to see out here.
So this is a particularly potent moment. You can feel movement, you can feel change right now in the wings for this entire criminal justice superstructure.
Absolutely.
Could I just ask each of you ladies to just speak to urgent next steps that you see and that you're participating in? Danielle.
So the thing we haven't done and are finally positioned to do in our conversation about mass incarceration in this country, and it's exciting to say mass incarceration and trust that everyone in the room knows what I mean. I wouldn't have done that 5 years ago. Something has changed in our public conversation. We are coming to terms with the fact that having 2.4 million people incarcerated is untenable in every term. It's untenable in human terms, in financial terms, in practical terms. The thing we have not done as a country is to say that is true even in cases of violence. So we've said that we know that that is true for low-level, non-violent offenses, and that we want to reduce incarceration substantially. If we want to get back to the 443,850 people who were locked up on the day I was born, we are going to have to do more than deal just with folks who commit those offenses. We are going to have to contend together with the question of violence. And I would suggest that there is no more urgent thing for us to get right. And when we understand that a full half of victims of crime don't even call the police because what's available is so contrary to their needs and wishes for their desires for safety and justice, they don't even pick up the phone. And that of those who do call, so few find their needs for safety and justice met by the one blunt instrument we have available to us, which is the strategy of putting a human in a cage. Like, what are the chances that every kind of harm that's rooted in gang violence, harm that's rooted in drug dealing, harm that's rooted in domestic violence, retaliatory violence, all these things, harm in cities and in rural areas and all of it, what are the chances that all of those kinds of pain all require the exact same blunt instrument to address? And at this moment, when we are contending with it, if we think about people who were hurt and we think about what people who are hurt deserve in the aftermath of that pain, how dare we not try to imagine something better? And I think this is the moment when we steer into this conversation to not stop at the place where we have developed some sort of surprising bipartisan consensus, though the 1994 crime bill was pretty bipartisan, but rather to really steer into a new territory where we ask ourselves, if only in the names of who has been hurt, to imagine and insist on the creation of something better than what we've done so far.
Thank you. Victoria.
We really are in kind of a new day. I mean, like you said, so much has changed since I started my career in the 90s, that we should acknowledge that there's been a lot of positive change. That said, I think we're in a moment where what's really important is that we ask where the children are. So to speak for the juvenile justice system in particular, and right now we have this, New York State is one of 2 states, it's New York and North Carolina, where we incarcerate everyone over the age of 16 automatically as adults. And North Carolina is in the process of changing theirs, I believe. And this is right now in the New York State, with the New York State legislature. There is legislation before them that would raise that age to 18. I believe it should be raised to 18 for all children, for all crimes, regardless of the nature of the crime. So one thing you can do is pay attention to that and encourage your elected officials to vote to raise the age. But another thing I think that's really important is to ask where the children are. Where are all of the children? Where are all of our children? Right now, what happens to children who are in the juvenile justice system is they get hidden. They get hidden in facilities. They get hidden in secure facilities and non-secure facilities. We have to ask where they are. In particular, we should always ask for the girls. Girls make up about 15% of young people in the juvenile justice system nationwide, and they need advocacy. They need our advocacy. I think the other thing that you can do is resist any effort anyone ever makes to talk about children using any other language. Children of color who wind up in the juvenile justice system are not juveniles. They're not on Rikers, they call them adolescents. They're children, they're always children. And I think when I'm a writer, I think about language a lot, but I think when we all think about language a lot, and we ask where the children are and we call them children and we don't settle for anything. There's a guy named Bart Lubau who worked at the Annie Casey Foundation for a long time, and he used to talk about this test of would it be good enough for your child? So when we say we're reforming the system, we still have to look at it from that lens. If it was your child, would this system be good enough? Would this facility be good enough? Would this law be good enough? Would this legislation be good enough? So I think when it's all of us together, we can. This system it's changing. It is ripe for change, and a lot of the low-hanging fruit. From my perspective, a lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been changed. A lot of the really easy stuff has been done. So right now, this is a heavy lift, but we can lift this. We can change this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ashley, take us forward.
You said so many things I wanted to say. But I think that one of the main things we have to do, and I said this last time I was here, is begin to deconstruct some things. When you talk about the children, there's this African proverb, say when they used to come into the village, they would say, how are the children? And you will know the well-being of the children by the response that the children are well. And it shows you the importance of children because they are our foundation, they are our future. I often think about the things that start early on that begin to affect them. The juvenile justice system, the educational system, our mental health system. It's a lot of systems surrounding our young people, and they're creating these pipelines to send them to jail. They got the cradle to the prison pipeline, the school to the prison pipeline, where we have police officers in our schools. We have metal detectors. We have, when kids get suspended and they gotta go before the suspension hearing boards, I remember I had to go in one for one of my kids, and when I walked in, it's an attorney that presides over the hearing, right? So it's almost like, what are you preparing our kids for? Are you preparing them to go before a judge and be desensitized to it? It's like, oh, I've been here before because I've been to a suspension hearing. Over what? Because you threw a pencil at your girl? So I think we have to begin to rethink how we treat our kids, and I think that's where restorative justice comes in at. How do we create alternatives to just being punitive, to just punishing them? And I was going to say, hold on, wait. Okay. I was going to say the song, there's a song that that takes place in your dance routine. And I played it over and over, and it's Meek Mill, it's Heaven or Hell. And he says in the line that some people go to college, some people go to jail, some people go to heaven, some people go to hell, but nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to fail. And so many times I hear out of people's mouths like, oh, our kids just don't want to do nothing. Oh, our kids or they just lazy. They don't want nothing for themselves. And in reality, it's like, who want to fail? Like, who want to end up behind bars? Who want to wake up every day thinking about the fact that they may not make it to 18? And I think when we begin to take those things into consideration, we begin to talk differently about our young people and understand, like, every child should want to dream.
Yep.
And when you see a kid that doesn't dream, it's like you should be concerned about what has taken place to snatch away those dreams. What has happened in that life? What has happened in reality that isn't forwarding our young people, but are like, they're suppressing them. And they're taking away their opportunities. You know, and when you tell a kid, like, your only two options is dead or in jail, and it's like, really?
Right.
So we have to be mindful about how we speak to our kids, because so many people worried about our kids dying by bullets, but in reality, our words are killing our kids daily.
That is true.
Every day, when you walk past a kid and you look at them crazy because they doing something that you don't like, you don't know what that may do to a kid. You know what I'm saying? And so I think first we have to like rethink how we talk about our kids, how we look at our kids, how we treat our kids, because they are our future, they are our village. And we are no better than them. So the more the juvenile justice system fill up with our kids, like, the worse we are. It's a reflection of us.
Absolutely.
It's a direct reflection of us.
Absolutely.
And so we have to begin to do that.
Can I just say really quick, I have had the privilege of knowing thousands of young people in the system over the years, and they write about the future. They write about dreams. So we have to meet them part way, right? And we have to hold those for them. So I would just say one other thing that you can do, like walk out the door, do right now, walk out the door and do, is don't ever, ever, ever believe anyone who tells you that there is no hope. Because when they tell you there's no hope for a child, then we have to carry that hope for that child.
Yeah.
That's our responsibility as the village that is New York City, right? And that is our country. But I would say just, and you know, not just to fight against that notion of hopelessness, I think, but to be really proactive and to say, I believe there is hope for, there's hope for all children. I live in a society where there must be hope for all children.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What is going on, of course, is when there's a systematic dehumanization of a segment of the population, what has also been missing are the humanities.
Yeah.
And our point, of course, as artists and as part of the humanities, is to rehumanize the dehumanized. And the dehumanized includes those people who would dehumanize anyone. And the fact that the whole society has been systematically dehumanized. And this is our work right now. This is a time for movement and for action. And that is what dance is. Dance is imagine something and take those steps, make those leaps of imagination, and that's what you are about to see from the Dream Ring itself. It is time for action. Over to the dancers. Thank you, our guests.
Thank you.